Well, it's just gone 5 p.m. on 80s Drive Time, and as it is a Friday means just one thing. We welcome Drive Time Dan into the studio. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good Friday and happy Easter to yourself, Paul, and to all your listeners. Hope you've had a good week and enjoyed the sunshine. Also, did you have any April Fool's jokes?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, looking forward to a weekend of chocolate. Well, April Fool, I must admit I stood in for Piers on his breakfast show to fool the listeners, but nothing really crazy this year.
I have a couple of random bits and pieces for you now.
Oh, random bits from you, Dan. This could go anywhere. Remember, no jokes.
Today's birthdays. Do you remember Chico from X Factor? He is 49 today. And English athlete and Olympic medalist Linford Christie is 60 today.
Well, happy birthday, guys.
And also today is Walk to Work Day.
Walk to Work Day? But it's Good Friday, and I wonder how many listeners still working from home have walked from the bedroom straight to their makeshift office.
And Peanut Butter and Jelly Day.
I'll give that a miss, I think.
Moving on now, I bet you're wondering who today's special guest is. Well, it's an exclusive.
Well, you know me, Dan, I love an exclusive on Drive Time.
Do you remember my clue last week when I said I'm never going to dance again?
Yeah, I've been racking my brains from your clue.
Well, that was a line from a famous George Michael song.
And it can't be the man himself, so put us out of our misery, Dan.
And this guy has played on that very song. I'd like to welcome on the Drive Time show, session musicianist and saxophonist Steve Gregory.
Hello, Danny.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, Danny.
Thank
Good
you
to be here.
Yeah, it's thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And we are going to talk about your magnificent musical career. But first off, you're well known for playing the saxophone. When did you discover your love for woodwind? And has a saxophone sort of been your closest friend in all of your life?
Well, actually, my mother was a dancer, and so my parents were quite musical, and so thanks to them, I had piano and guitar lessons when I was quite small. So I feel very grateful to them. And then when I was about 13, so I got a clarinet, and I had a friend over across the road. He had a big sister who had some of these beautiful jazz records by people like Dave Brubeck and Ahmad Jamal and Miles Davis and stuff like that. And so that's when I first sort of got to hear jazz, and I thought, well, a saxophone, and maybe I could play the saxophone. And then when I suppose I must have been about 14 or 15, and there was a boy in my class at school, and his father knew, I think, one of the secretaries who worked for the big agent who brought Ray Charles over. And so he got some tickets to see Ray Charles at the Hammersmith, well, it was in those days it was called the Hammersmith Odeon. And so this was around the time of Take These Chains From My Heart and have a, Tell Me What I Say, all those. And when I'd never seen anything like this Ray Charles concert, it was just so amazing. I thought, well, this is what I want to do. I don't want to get a proper job.
Yeah.
My parents never got a proper job, so
yeah. Keep it in the family. Keep it in the family.
So that was the beginning of it. Really.
Yeah. And I've just got all your career highlights here in front of me. It's really impressive. You got your big break. Obviously, you worked with Fleetwood Mac, and you played on Honky Tonk Woman on the Rolling Stones, 1969.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And you can hear the saxophone about 2 minutes into the track. It comes in. Your sax on.
Well, it's way back in the mix, but I think they just sort of used it in the guitar solo. They sort of brought it in. There was 3 saxophones on there, but they're quite way back in the mix,
Yeah. And in 1969, did you work on Albatross at all, or with Fleetwood Mac?
Well, it was the second Fleetwood Mac album, which was called Mr. Wonderful, and that was through Mike Vernon. His record label was called Blue Horizon, and he sort of discovered the Fleetwood Mac and Chicken Shack and the sort of blues bands. He was a big blues fan in those days, and he got me and Johnny Armand to play saxophones. And it was the side of the album where it's all Peter Green's tunes, and Peter just sort of sang us the lines he wanted, and. Yeah, that was how and it was because I think the Rolling Stones saw our names on that album. That's why they got us to play on Women.
Awesome. And into the 70s, of course, Baker Street, that's a famous sax refrain. And was it actually Bob Honus who played the sax on that little solo on Baker Street, or was it someone else, completely different?
No, it was a guy called Ralph Ravenscroft. He played on that, and I think he died quite recently, actually. But the 70s there was lots and lots of work. I mean, I used to, in the 70s I sort of got was a lot of session work, and I used to play. I did Chris Rea's first couple of albums. You know, I did some arrangements for those as well, and what happened to Benny? You know, and Fool If You Think It's Over, the soprano sax, and Fool If You Think It's Over. I did that.
And being a session...
And I started playing with Georgie Fame's band.
Oh, I see.
I was sort of doing sessions, but I sort of had a regular job from about 1973 for about 20, 30 years. I played with Georgie Fame's Blue Flames, you know.
And I wanted to...
In fact, in the 60s, I'd met Georgie Fame in the 60s at the Flamingo. I used to go and sit in with him on the all-night sessions. I was around, and I'm afraid I go back a long way.
Cool. And I wanted to ask, you know, being a session musician, do you get your fee? You know, do you just turn up, record your part, get paid, and is that the end of the story, or do you get like royalties, or is it more to it than that?
Well, in those back in those days, yes, you just got a fee, but gradually things sort of improved over the years. I mean, I think it was in the 80s we started getting sort of repeats for top of the Pops sessions and things, and then I think it was in 1990 they changed the copyright laws so that session musicians were entitled to a small percentage of airplay. So when it's on the radio, and if it's all been logged correctly hopefully it is by the BBC or whatever, then you do get. So I do get some quite nice payments now and then from the stuff I've done, especially from Careless Whisper, obviously.
Yeah, that must be very rewarding when that happens.
Well, yeah, I'm very grateful, and I feel I'm very grateful to my parents. Cause I think, you know, I mean, they died quite a while ago, but I just feel if I hadn't had music when I was quite small, then I wouldn't have had the confidence actually to have the arrogance to try and earn a living playing an instrument.
And of course we have to touch on Careless Whisper. Is it true you were the 11th person to be asked to play on that record? And do you remember the day?
No, that's not correct. I was the 9th.
Okay, well that's that cleared up then. Do you remember the day well? How many takes did you have to do on Careless Whisper? Was it?
Well, it's just. I mean, if you haven't heard the story, I was. That's just 1984, and I was doing quite a lot of session work at that time. And I had a session in the afternoon that I was doing in Wembley for somebody in Wembley. Then I was playing in the evening. Had a gig in a pub in the Oval, and George's secretary phoned me up about midday. And said, can you come to the studio? George has been trying to do this thing. And I said, well, look, I'm booked until, I won't be free until sort of 11 o'clock midnight. She said, well, come whenever you can. Just so she gave me the studio and that. And so when I got there, it was about getting on for midnight. And there was another saxophone player in the studio, Ray Worley, who I knew quite well. And he said, well, what are you doing here? And George hadn't showed up, you know. So Ray was a bit fed up. So he said, well, I'm going. You can do it. I've had enough of this. I'm waiting. They'll have to pay me. I'm going. So he left. So just myself. It was Chris Porter. And so I said, well, look, I've had quite a long day. I'm going to do a better job now than I will at 3 o'clock in the morning. So can we try and do something?
Yeah.
So we went into the control room, and George had already recorded it in LA with Jerry Wexler producing it, and with Tom Scott had played the saxophone line. And when he said, "This is what you've got to do," and he played this thing, I thought, "Well, that's fantastic. Why on earth does he want to do it again?" I said, "I can't play it as well as that." And he said, "Oh, it's a new version. He's done his own production. It's a new track. It's got to be redone. He just wants that, but on the new track." So I went in the studio and I tried to do it. And my saxophone is an old Selmer from about 1954 or something, and I didn't have that top note. I didn't have a proper note on my saxophone. I had what we call a fake fingering I had to do to play it.
Yeah.
So it didn't really sound that smooth. You know, it didn't sound that great. And so, you know, having been around for a while, having had a bit of experience, I suggested to him. I said, well, look, if you took it down by a semitone, which is a very small amount, you know, semitone. So I said, if you took it down a semitone, I'd have all the proper notes on my horn, you know, and we could see how it sounds, and you know. So that's what he did. So he sort of did his calculations and took it down a semitone. So I went out again and I played it in the lower key. Then after I finished it, you know, I went back in the control room and he played it back and he put it back up to the proper speed. And as he was playing it back, George walked into the studio and he said, "Oh, I think we got it." then he pointed at me. He said, "You are number 9."
Amazing. And it's
So that's the story of it, really.
Lovely.
And he did mess around. He wanted to experiment a bit. Yeah. We tried a few other things, but basically that's the story of the song. You know, and I had no idea it was a single. You know, because the previous single had been "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," you know, which was a dance track, and I thought, well, this is a ballad. It must be an album track or something. And then a few weeks later, of course, it was everywhere you went. You couldn't get away from it.
Yeah.
Everywhere you went, you heard Careless Whisper.
True. And is Careless Whisper saxophone solo, is it in a tenor or alto range?
No, this is what confuses people, because he specifically wanted it played on a tenor, which made it a bit more difficult, you see. It would be quite easy to play on an alto, but it was played on a tenor. He insisted it was played on a tenor. So.